Transition partners take mental health very seriously. We are now supporting Claro Mental Health Charity, who are local and based in Harrogate. We are working closely with Richard Kenny, who is the IT director at TechBuyer. Claro operates as a commercial workshop making goods for businesses which enable those with long-term mental health conditions to function in a voluntary real work environment. We would love it if you can join us in supporting this amazing cause and charity and donate what you can. Any amount would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, and thanks to all our listeners.
Hi, this is the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. My name's Ellie Greening.
And my name's Sandra Patel-Stewart.
On this podcast, we will be interviewing some of the UK's greatest tech leaders. We'll be discussing war stories, battle scars, and their learnings from their journeys.
Hopefully, you will pick up some great tips, learn from others' experiences, and have a good laugh along the way.
So hello everyone, thank you very much for tuning into the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So we are super happy today to be joined by an old friend of Sandra's, who's Nigel Wilson. He is the Director and General Manager at Scott Logic. So Scott Logic is a high quality UK-based technology consultancy, creating intuitive software applications for clients in very complex domains, employing 300 plus permanent expert technologists and delivering specialists with deep domain experience in financial services and the public sector. Nigel has been leading Scott Logic through a continual period of sustainable organic growth. He's the executive board director with accountability for the consultancy P&L. So hello and lovely to meet you, Nigel.
Good morning. Lovely to
Hi, Nigel. Nice to have you on the show. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, good. Sun's finally shining again as well, isn't it? So
we like that. It's always a benefit we can get out without the umbrella.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. Well, it's great to, we had a really good catch up, about a month or so ago, wasn't it? After a very long time of, obviously I've known you for a number of years now, so it's great to have you on the show. It'd be really good to start with finding out an understanding for the listeners, I guess, more about your background, your journey, where it all started for you. So if you could talk us through how you got into tech and where it all started and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. Gosh, well, I'll do my best. It's 20 years or so to summarise. I'll do. I mean, I guess it all started with a curiosity as a child to know how things work.
Yeah.
I was kind of always in trouble with my parents because I'd be taking apart whatever electronic toy or gadget I had, like, what's on the insides, how's this function? What makes
as long as you were fixing it after.
Oh, look, I've got all these spare parts left over, And so it started though with a curiosity for that, and that led me into sort of an interest in electronics and computers, going to uni at Newcastle, I did microelectronics and software engineering, so it's quite an interesting sort of degree, because the concept was you could basically go from knowing how to take a grain of sand, make it into silicon, make it into a chip, program up an operating system and all the applications and things that sit on it. So quite a broad thing. And I think probably when I first sort of thinking about starting my career, I wasn't kind of sure which direction I was going to go in. I was always more interested in sort of the hardware and how things work rather than the software. And it wasn't until I got to uni and started programming and I thought, oh, this is great. I can achieve a lot more without having to necessarily kind of go out and get all the bits, and solve it. So that was quite good fun. And from there, went into a grad scheme at a consultancy, Logica as it was at the time, down in Cambridge. Worked on some interesting kind of projects. It was all C Unix in those days. So people.
Just a quick question on that. So getting into the grad scheme, I mean, is that something that you kind of, when you were at university, was that kind of like you felt like that was a set kind of path for you, or did you fall into it? Because I've heard kind of different views
Well, it's
on?
kind of interesting because I always recognised I wanted to kind of have a career in a job after uni, and so I was sponsored by BT when I was at university, and they sponsored this Castle with a view to bringing in future managers into the business. So it's quite interesting because although I was doing a very technical degree, on the side in my holidays I was doing projects at BT, training on some of their management courses and that sort of thing. But then in the sort of early 90s, they were kind of cutting back on their graduate intakes. But might not get anything at BT, you're gonna have to look around. And so did the usual thing of thumbing through the sort of milk round book and trying to find which.
I remember milk round.
So that was really where it started, really.
Yeah, amazing.
Ended up in Logica, yeah.
Fantastic. So how long were you with Logica for, and then where did you go from?
A couple of years. So I did a couple of years with them. Did a little stint with a product business. I think early in my career I was kind of like, I love sort of making things and love the tech, but kind of like consultancy product business. And I sort of oscillated a couple of times in my early career before deciding it has to be consultancy because of the variety it kind of gives you an exposure and more at the sharp end in terms of the business and dealing with clients, which is a kind of real passion. So yes, oscillated to and fro. Worked for an organisation called Cambridge Consultants for a while. Wrote some interesting software to inspect contact lenses in a factory so that you could reject the ones that were broken before they got into the packet. So all sorts of interesting low-level sort of programming types. Really, really interesting. I've worked across all sorts of domains in my career. And as I mentioned, about being in consultancy, that's one of the things I really like, is the kind of variety, working across different sectors. And then sort of late 90s, starting a family, met my now ex-wife in Cambridge, when working at Logica, both on the grad scheme. And
really?
starting a family, late 90s, decided to move back because obviously we had family back in Yorkshire, so it made sense to have that ecosystem support, starting a family. And kind of we want to raise our children as Northerners and Yorkshire people, obviously not headed back to my hometown of York after about 4 or 5 years in Cambridge, and then that was kind of interesting then, because I kind of like, having done sort of 5 years in my early career programming and sort of on the tech side, was like, well, okay, I know how some of the tech works, but I want to kind of do a bit more. Always had a curiosity for business, I think, from that early days as a graduate doing the sort of management course with BT at uni. And so it sort of took a slightly bold move and went to work for an advertising agency in Leeds to do this thing called new media, building websites and all sorts of things, which were in 1999. And that was fascinating because that exposed me to a completely different world. I'd worked in tech consultancies and tech firms, and here I was in a creative agency. It was all very colourful and sparky, and
it's all very hip and in trend, and wasn't it?
Very different environments. Of course, most tech companies like that now, don't they? But they didn't in the late 90s. And again, though, there was a kind of theme coming through in terms of innovative use of tech and some cool projects. So we did, this would date it, we did the first interactive text message video show for MTV, which won some awards at the time.
That is very cool.
Basically, the teenagers, because text messaging is just taking off then. So we did the text messaging. You could vote in what video you wanted next, A, B, C, D.
You should spend so much credit on that.
And it would change the video. And that was groundbreaking technology.
Amazing.
I bet your kids love that as well. I can imagine if it's like your dad's making that back then. That's so cool.
And we did a similar thing. We did we processed all the text messaging for the very first Big Brother. When Big Brother launched for the very first show, we did all that and sent out text messages related to what's happening in the Big Brother house and that kind of stuff. So all sorts of kind of bizarre and interesting internet projects that were really cool. And then sort of did that for about 5 years, and then punctuated by a startup and kind of a joint venture with a client, which didn't last particularly long. Got back into consultancy again. So I worked briefly for what is now Pixel, was then IOCO in York.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did a couple of years project management, account management for them, and until lockdown, that was the only period I've sort of worked in York. So that kind of couple of years, and then got tapped on the shoulder by a recruiter in my network who said, "Oh, there's this small consultancy in Leeds. They're looking for someone to go and run their Leeds office. Would you be interested?" I was like, "Well, okay, I'll go and talk to them." That was BJSS, and spent nearly 10 years with them in various roles, and that sort of was the sort of thing, I guess, that my career took off into leadership and getting into bigger positions. That business was only about 60 people when I joined, roughly half and half of Leeds. Yeah.
How many were they at when you left? Do you know?
About 650, 700. Something
Wow,
like
amazing.
Tenfold sort of growth really during those 10 years.
Yeah.
And that took my career sort of into new areas. Again, innovative use of tech and complex problems. Some of the huge programs that were involved in at the time around FX trading, high frequency, low latency FX trading, oil dealing and pricing.
Cool.
All sorts of really cool stuff. And that exposed me to projects on a completely different level that I'd not sort of worked on before. So that was kind of a really exciting adventure. And then sort of bring it up to date. Here I am now today, sort of at Scott Logic, and really enjoying that. Getting to travel around normally when we're not in lockdown for amazing offices across the UK and a smaller sort of sales and account management base over in Copenhagen as well for some of our European.
And you've been instrumental in the growth, haven't you, of at Scott Logic as well? I guess when we spoke, you said that you'd pretty much been doing what a similar role to what you'd gone to do at BJSS to start with.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've been on a great growth path within Scott Logic as well. Fantastic, great track record. You've got some really interesting things there that you could probably shout out about a bit more. So on that point with regards to Scott Logic, it'd be really good to understand and know a little bit more about kind of, I guess, like current pain points and challenges in your role and how you're overcoming those, particularly, I guess, with coming out of lockdown and how that journey's gone for you, any kind of particular pain points, and anything that's, I guess, you think that would be useful for our listeners and viewers to learn about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been an interesting year for us, really, not what we were kind of expecting. And
certainly could call it that.
Well, we're all sort of thinking, well, yeah, because we've had a few years. Because when I just joined Scott Logic, I joined about a month before the EU referendum. And then sort of there was that vote, and it's just like, okay, what does that mean for us in the business? And kind of like the business continued to grow. And then of course now we've had the pandemic, so it's kind of interesting. But I think I guess my sort of philosophical view on all of this and reflecting on sort of a career in tech consultancy is that periods of change tend to bring with them innovation and the demand for the kind of services that we offer, really. And more so because a lot of our clients may be perhaps uncertain about making their own investments and expanding their own teams and people, but still have significant change to deliver to manage the uncertainty out there in the markets and in the bigger business environment, really. In terms of challenges, I think the key thing for me, the thing that I've missed the most, is being able to connect with all the people across the business. One of the things I've always tried to be as a leader in the business is kind of accessible to our people. And whenever I go around the offices, trying to like, okay, well, we'll go and have a beer after work, or I'll be in the kitchen at lunchtime, come and have a natter with me if there's anything on your mind, that sort of thing. And that sort of stuff's really hard to replicate in this online environment. The 9 to 5, the work is absolutely fine. We're all able to do that, and our project teams are working remotely perfectly well. In fact, the business is set up for remote development by default in terms of the way we work with our clients. So that all the day job works fine, but the bit that's hard is the kind of maintaining relationships, getting those sort of little conversations with people. It kind of feels a bit odd to kind of maybe just drop a Teams meeting in someone's diary for a one-to-one and kind of like, oh, we haven't chatted for a while, let's have a chat. And people think, what's all that about? What's going on? So we've done a few things like everybody has. I don't think there's any secret sauce here. We've had, virtual wine tasting, virtual gin tasting. We've had, the sort of kitchen chat. So kind of, there's an open channel at lunchtime, and where people would normally sit around the tables in the kitchen and natter to each other having their lunch. They sat around at home, and you just drop in and out of an open channel to have a conversation.
That's one thing that I think that's really nice, and we've tried to implement that a couple of times, but we've struggled with that because a large part of our role is to be on the phones. So obviously it's difficult to have kind of like open meetings or open discussions where you can just drop in and out of conversations. But I think that's I think that's been probably really healthy for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know how, with obviously you being in a consultancy, how kind of lockdown and I guess the current measures that are in place in terms of not safely being able to conduct face-to-face meetings, because you'd spent a lot of time traveling, and I can assume a lot of your guys have been on client site, and that's for a consultancy and our business. It's it's what really helps cement relationships. How do you think that's impacted, or has it impacted your business? Like, have you seen any fundamental effects to the business over the last 3 or 4 months as a result of that?
No fundamental impacts, although I think, it's a matter of time. I think when you work closely with your clients together on projects, you build up relationships, and those relationships can sustain sort of the kind of bizarre changes that we've had in the last 3-4 months. But I think, the longer it goes on, I think the less you can kind of rely on that, and you need to kind of almost top up the relationship with some more sort of social interaction. I think as humans, we're all designed to connect with each other. That's what we're about. So it's kind of unnatural to be in this state. My biggest fear, I think, when we went into lockdown was that, okay, well, the existing work will continue. That's all good. We're all set up. We know each other. Our teams are working well together. We've got a good relationship with the client. But I was like, ooh, but we'll never be able to start anything new. It won't work. How can we possibly build a relationship with a new client?
Easily. Mute that.
But that has worked. That has worked. And actually, quite unusually, not just sort of software development work. We've done some advisory work over Zoom, over Teams, run workshops, and delivered that kind of engagement successfully as well. So I've been pleasantly surprised. You're sort of slightly programmed in our roles to sort of worry about what might go wrong and think ahead and plan ahead for those sorts of risks. But I've been pleasantly surprised at how we've managed to get new projects up and running. It's been great.
Yeah, I think it's that advisory piece. There's so much need and requirement there, isn't there? I don't know if you listened to the one where Elliot Anchovis-Holder came on our podcast, and he's working he's been a permanent VP of digital before, and he has now moved into a bit of contract work, but now he's doing advisory work with just many different organisations because there's so much requirement for that at the moment. But it's great to hear that there's still opportunity for you to be able to make new business and new connections during these challenging times, I guess. So it's amazing, and it's brilliant hearing your story. And obviously there's this natural affinity to client delivery and that aspect from your background in consultancy, which is brilliant. And you've played a key role in helping some organisations grow, like we're talking about BJSS, which was fantastic. And obviously Stuart came on our podcast, maybe he was like our 3rd or 4th episode. It feels like forever ago now, and it's really interesting hearing their story. How do you two both know each other then? Because Sandra said you've known each other for a while, is that right?
Oh, it goes back over 10 years, I think, Sandra.
Yeah, we met, I think we met when I was at iSource, so long time ago. Was that about, 11, 12 years ago?
Was that when Nigel was at BJSS then?
BJSS, yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. I remember recruiting Java developers for you.
Absolutely. Never get enough Java developers.
There's always a need for Java developers, even now. But it's great to be able to play such a key role in instrumental position in these businesses growing. And clearly that's something you're really passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know, what else gets you out of bed? Like, what are you really passionate about doing at Scott Logic at the moment?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think I've spent quite a lot of time in, certainly last year, but in the recent years, sort of building out sort of the senior team and looking at our people and how we run the business and operate and work together. And it's quite interesting, you know, what I said at the sort of the top of the conversation around wanting to know how things work, and that started with like, how do electronic things work, how do computers work, how does tech work? But so always been that curiosity that's been a theme throughout my career, I think, in terms of okay, how does tech work? How do businesses work? And that was a real thing for me, and that's why I made that deliberate switch into what I did when I moved back in York and going to the marketing agency to get closer to that. And then how the projects work. I picked up a lot of that BJSS, but I think more recently it's how the people work. I think that's been a big thing for me recently. So that's kind of become a bit of a passion, and something I'm quite excited about now in terms of some of the people we've got in place, some of the hires we've made into the business in the last sort of year or so, coupled with some of the new roles that some of our existing people have picked up as well and stepping up into. So that's the thing that's kind of exciting for me at the minute.
Yeah, and actually we're in a similar position with our business, right, Sandra? Like, we've just had a bit of a restructure, and it's so nice, like, watching the little chemistries within the new teams form, and like all these great things coming out of the past couple of months. And now we've started coming back in the office a little bit more. I mean, we're really fortunate. We've got quite a big office space in Leeds, so it's quite easy for us to be able to be socially distant. But it's nice to be able to watch the people come together in their little teams and all these amazing things happening, which is certainly really exciting. So that's great. Clearly, you've achieved a lot. You've had a great, successful career in tech, and you've worked on some big projects. But I'd love to know, what's your greatest achievement in life?
Oh, that's a good question, that. And I think there's been lots of smaller things rather than one big thing. I don't think that you can necessarily pinpoint.
It's a tough one, isn't it? It's tough to
tough
think
one,
of one like thing. Yeah.
I can remember.
What stands out to you is, like, I don't know, what's the first thing that you think of?
What's the first thing I think at the minute? It's some of the work we're doing at Scott Logic and building out our senior team. Very excited about what we're doing with our individual offices and the senior teams there. So that's the thing. I think probably because it's current, but it's taken a while to slot some of the pieces in. So it feels, and we haven't necessarily seen all the results of that yet. But I'm really excited about that. So I think
it's like nurturing your little baby at the moment. Then, now the kids have flown the nest. This Scott Logic now is the new one.
Fantastic. You've come on a long way. You've worked, obviously you had the stint within an agency, but other than that, you've had quite a long-standing career within consultancy, which is amazing. And I understand, that it's a difficult it's a different kind of beast, really, working within consultancy. And obviously, it can be quite pressurized in different ways and stressful. How, because some people kind of go into consultancy and then it's one of those, isn't it, where, like Marmite, you kind of love it or hate it, and people are like, nah, I'm done with consultancy life. But you've obviously stuck at it. You were in consultancy, you left it for a bit, you went back in, and then you've had a good 15 years in consultancy consistently. how have you managed and dealt with the whole kind of like stress of it all? Do you think, like, why do you think you've really excelled in that environment? Have you kept yourself sane and healthy and looked after yourself?
I mean, I think the staying sane, I think, it's an interesting one. I think the variety helps for me. I think the sort of the moving from challenge to challenge really helped, certainly earlier on in my consultancy career. I think now, what do I do? I mean, I guess I've changed some of my habits because I've been at home in York for 4 months and not out on the road. But just it's just taking the space, I think, for yourself. It's just kind of taking the pressure off a bit, doing something different. I've been really getting into walking around York and getting lots of steps in. So just like, and that's
a
really
lovely
good.
place to live.
Yeah.
I to kind of punctuate the day. So get up early, do an hour of walking, and then settle into the sort of the work, and then kind of like the same in the evening. So I've replaced commuting with walking, and it's a bit nicer actually. But at some point I'll get back to going to trains. But
I know that's the thing, isn't it? I think
lockdown weight gain as well, which I'm quite pleased about.
Oh God, you don't need to talk to me and Sandra about the lockdown weight gain.
It was kind of exponential in April, sort of falling COVID cases, unfortunately, but I soon got a handle on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the thing with the whole of lockdown, isn't it? That we're all coming out of this with things that we've changed and we're really enjoying, and things that we're missing, and it's trying to moving forwards. It's trying to get that balance, isn't it, of keeping some of those things in place and not losing everything, all the new kind of habits and routines that we've picked up, which is going to be the next challenge, I guess, for us all.
No, absolutely. And I sort of deliberately put a focus on that in terms of, okay, well, this is, potentially going to be quite a stressful situation. There's a lot of unknowns in the business, a lot of unknowns, personally, I haven't been to my flat in London for 4 months, what's going on down there. And so there's all sorts of interesting things to deal with. And it's just like, okay, well, you kind of have to get through this. And so, focus on well-being, taking all the regular exercise, and setting myself goals. It's just like, I'm really upset if I don't do 20,000 steps a day. So
wow.
And the same with the sort of, I've been, and this is thank you to you and the Taking Time in Tech, but I got back into mindfulness as well, which is something I'd done years ago.
Oh, brilliant.
So
that's really good to hear. Oh, brilliant. You should join us for the next one, actually, because the next one's more about kind of like leadership and managing and leading everyone through the next period of change and anxiety and all that sort of stuff. So it'd be quite a good one. And in fact, on that note, it'd be good to understand what whether Scott Logic has plans to get their staff back into the office, and how you're managing that as a business, and if you're coming up with any kind of challenges or resistance for the change.
Yeah, we're keen to do the right thing by our people, but also we're conscious of society at large. So it's quite interesting, I suppose we could start opening offices and allowing people or asking people to go back, depending on which way you look at it. And then you think, well, okay, well, do we need to put pressure on the transport system by going into work? Maybe it's more important that key workers can have a space on the train than we do. So there's all sorts of those thoughts sort of whirling around in your mind. But then we're also conscious of the people that actually work from home isn't as, I'm lucky, I've got a room in the house I've set up as an office. I can put myself away in there, do my work, and then leave it, and sort of step outside of that space. But we are very conscious of the fact that doesn't work for everybody. So we've just, in the last week, sort of surveyed all of our people, spoken to them through their line managers as well, trying to get a feel on kind of like, where are you at with all of this now? Restrictions are easing. What should we be doing? So I don't think there's a sort of the majority of our people are kind of sit somewhere in the middle, but we're conscious that there is a small but significant group who, really want to get back into the office for at least a couple of days a week, and that's probably driven by, their, unfortunately haven't got the space. A lot of people, in London don't have the space for the sort of home office setup. Sharing an internet broadband connection in a shared house and it dropping out and frustrating things like that. So there's all of those.
The fights that's caused, don't we, Sandra?
I know, we had a terrible podcast recording once and we had to re-record the whole thing, and Ellie was on leave that day, so she specifically joined me to record a podcast.
It was the hottest day of the year, our lad.
It was the hottest day of the year, and
I logged on
like 7 o'clock at night or something, 6:30, 7, and my internet was terrible. The person that we were doing the interview with, their internet was terrible, and it was just
So we keen to do.
I should have been having a few gins in the garden, but I logged on, did the podcast, and then it didn't even get used in the end. The material wasn't good enough. So,
as you were saying.
Yeah. So there's all those little hiccups and challenges which make it quite interesting. But we're actively considering that now because it is feasible. We've looked into all the logistics, health and safety, hands on.
Cool. So you think you might be getting your staff back in soon then?
I think we want to do something. I don't think we necessarily want to mandate it, but I think for those that it helps them, either because they're not set up for home working, or they just feel isolated. They live alone and kind of want to get out and get into the workspace. I think that's quite important for people's well-being.
How have you found that, or has lockdown and COVID, has it affected, have you seen any issues with attracting talent or retaining talent? Have you experienced any challenges on that front?
I guess there's probably less sort of energy around both of those things at the minute. We sort of like, okay, until the responsible thing to do is kind of not keep hiring as aggressively as we used to, just until we understand for sure what's going to happen. And I think, in a business like ours, there's potentially a lag before any changes come through, because as I say, we've got projects in flight that continue, but what does that mean in terms of the future? So the responsible thing to do is not sort of continue to hire aggressively. And retention as well. I think probably people are very much in the mindset of, okay, well, we're in lockdown, kind of get on with what we're doing. So there's no immediate challenge. I'm acutely aware of where will we be in the future and what's coming, and wanting to be on the front of that. So just so important that we keep in contact with everyone. Try and keep the communications up. I think, kind of hands up, I probably want to do better on that, but we do what we can. And just keep in contact with people, because I think, I think people will have kind of quite long memories of this situation. I think how individuals are treated by their employer during this period will reflect. So I don't think, we're going to have sort of people wanting to leave the business next week, but I am conscious that how we conduct ourselves now will be reflected upon and could impact retention in the future.
100%, yeah. Definitely.
As leaders, we can always do better, right? You can always do that little bit more. And I think, actually, interestingly, from a recruitment perspective, the market now is, there's a lot of people looking for work, but there's not just the people that are on furlough or out of work that are worried about their work security. There's so many people out there who just aren't happy with how the situation has been handled by their employer. And
really?
It's quite shocking, really. I'd say like 50, probably about 50% of the people that are contacting me have got security right now. And I'm there saying, like, are you sure you want to look? Like, obviously, it's a difficult time. I always try and push back a little bit on people, because like, it's really important that people make the right move. And
absolutely.
we're quite like that, aren't we, Sandra, that we'll always like test the boundaries a little bit to see where we're at. And I think it's tough because we just, it's hard because there's a lot of people looking for work that need work, but there's a lot of people that don't technically need a new job, but they're not entirely happy with the situation.
And that's within the tech engineering space, or how?
Yeah, in the tech space, yeah.
Which is quite crazy, isn't it? It's quite crazy. But
the start of lockdown, and probably for a good couple of months, we were in a position where we were struggling to attract talent, the right talent, for our clients, because everyone was, just kind of quite nervous about moving, and also those that weren't wanted to stay true and loyal to their company, which is, understandable. But we've certainly seen a bit of a shift, haven't we, in the last kind of 2, 3, 4 weeks, really. So yeah, absolutely agree with you.
What is it that's turning people off? Sorry, I'm interviewing you now, but what is the thing that what's turning people away from their current employer during lockdown? What are the hazards that as leaders we need to avoid?
I think it's that communication piece and keeping on top of people, and I think checking in. There's a lot of value in just checking in on your staff, and sometimes people are like, actually, I've had a few people say that my office isn't open until January and I can't stay at home. I don't want to stay at home, and things like that. I've heard that a few times. I think it's just a mixture, isn't it? I think like there's so much, like you said, it's hard because you want to communicate with your staff as much as we can and support everyone. But like, I'm just thinking of my personal situation as a leader, like probably like 10 weeks ago when we were in the depths of it, like I was personally struggling as well. So to be able to then reach out and check in on your staff is hard, and we've all tried to do it as much as we can, but now we're coming hopefully to the end of it and that everyone's feeling a little bit better. I think just making sure your staff are okay and anything you can do to support and create that sense of community is so important. But you need to, every person's situation is different. There's a lot of people that are so scared right now to leave the house, and that there's no chance they're ready to go back into the office for the rest of this year. And then there's other people that just want to get back to the office as soon as possible.
And I think we've had situations with some of our staff, that were really, really struggling to focus and work from home, and I've offered some of our team optional furlough, more for their sanity and their health, because one of our guys in particular, she was just really, really struggling, and at the end of that she was like, I'd only want to return to my role if I can come into the office. She pretty much said, I cannot work at home. I just can't do it. So I think it's, I think we're getting a kind of mix, and there's some people that are still kind of obviously very worried and anxious about coming back into the office, but others, where companies have announced and said, look, we're not thinking about it, we're not doing anything about it until at least 2021. We have had candidates where they're like, do you know what, if I can get back into a office, I'll move. We've a couple of our clients as well, actually. A couple of our clients have been in our offices using our big meeting room, because
we've got we've got quite a lot of space.
And we've done it all, it's all been safe, and we've cleaned it all down before and after and everything, and done deep
seemed cleans. A bit I know I've heard of a number of organisations saying not back to the office this year, or not back to the office till summer next year. And I thought and I understand, because I get a lot of questions, we get a lot of questions from our people, and I think it's natural human instinct, we want some sort of certainty. So a lot of people want an answer, and I'm sort of being honest and saying, look, there's no playbook for this. None of us have done this before. I'm facing this situation for the first time. We're going to try and do the best we can given the circumstance. And I don't want to sort of lay down a policy around what sort of new normal, and I hate the phrase, looks like, because it's an evolving situation. And so right now we're all work from home. We may open up partially, and then we'll take it from there. And so I'm trying to be, kind of just honest with, we don't have all the answers yet. We'll do the right thing given the circumstances at the time, and it's going to be a changing piece, I think.
The thing is, with tech, there's always so many opportunities for people with the skill set, so that if the office isn't opening up till January 2021 and there's 6 months till then, and they're getting messages anyway about opportunity, then they might just take the leap, and people look after their staff in tech. We're really fortunate the companies that we work with as a business really look after their staff, so that there's always quite safe moves in tech, I think, to be able to make. But it's a tough one, because I'm really proud of the tech community for how responsible all the tech leaders have been, and selfless in their like perspective of it, and like we're not rushing anything, and like all the leaders that we've interviewed on the podcast, Sandra, haven't they been like no, like we think of like the.
And there's been a big focus and emphasis around the people during pretty much all our recordings as well, which is really, really great to hear. And it's been quite refreshing that.
I think, like, interestingly as well, like one thing that we can all take from this year, there's so much stigma around like mental health awareness and all this, but this is the first year where we've all experienced some dark moment. So I think the best outcome of this year is that we all take that appreciation forward, because it's something that's always been tough, isn't it? But I think it's so apparent like right now that I think that's something really positive that we can take. And there's so many different things that we can take from it, but that's the most important thing that we learn about it, isn't it, moving forward? So I've got 2 quick questions, and the first one's quite direct. What is your top tip for leadership?
Top tip? God. I don't know. I think for me, something I mentioned earlier about being accessible.
Yeah, I love that.
And being kind of quite transparent. It's interesting. I think, Sandra, you posted something about vulnerability in leadership as well, and I think that kind of what really works. I think if you try and connect on a personal level, I think, rather than sort of,
it's not always easy to do, is it?
It's not easy to do. It's not easy to do with over 300 people, but somehow trying to do that. Yeah.
I love that accessibility piece as well, because like you say, even just hanging around the kitchen at lunch, it's something that you've got to make time for in your diary, because I'm sure your diary gets manic, but I'm sure people love that and appreciate it. So I think it's such a simple thing that if any of us leaders could try and do that once a week, book out an hour and be seen and be present, like that's such a positive thing, isn't it? And it's the little things that make a difference. That's amazing. So we talked earlier about past couple of months have put a lot of plans on hold, but it would be great to hear like what you're most excited about, any short-term, longer-term plans with Scott Logic, and personally as well, like what have you got to look forward to?
Well, as I say, kind of been quite a lot going on in the business recently. I'm quite excited to I'm very excited to get out to Copenhagen and get more going with our office over there.
How many have you got in Copenhagen?
Well, we've hired our first employee, so we've got an awesome sales guy over there, Rene, and he joined us about a week before Denmark went into lockdown. So we were sat having a drink in Bristol, and he's like looking at the news and like, Denmark's going to lockdown on Thursday. I'm not flying back to Friday. I better get on the plane tomorrow.
Gosh.
So that was all too brief an introduction to the business, unfortunately. So looking forward to reconnecting with what we're doing in Copenhagen and the expansion we've got over there. The interesting thing is, of course, that we've been selling during lockdown and starting projects over there in lockdown. So that's fantastic.
Oh, great.
And then I think the other thing is, actually just so excited to see some of the new people that come into our business recently, some of the new principal consultants, what our heads of consulting are doing around their offices, and that growing out. So it's kind of, it's exciting to see some of the seeds you've planted and watered a little bit grow, I think.
Fantastic. We've got some exciting times ahead. Have you anything to look forward to personally? Have you got any holidays booked in or anything?
What holidays, Sandra? I don't know what this concept.
I know. Do you know what though? People are starting to enjoy holidays, aren't they now? Like, which is nice to see. I've just been to the lakes for 3 or 4 days, and I wasn't sure about going and how I'd feel while we were there. And
you were really anxious, weren't you?
Yeah, well, to the point where we nearly cancelled it. But I'm so glad we went now. And I've got a friend that's in Sicily at the moment. I'm so jealous. Looks like she's having an amazing time.
I was quite disappointed. I'd booked to go to Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival in August.
Oh, wow.
Which I absolutely loved. I mean, that's sort of, we talked about sort of, taking yourself away from work and reach. That for me, kind of that annual sort of cultural recharge in Edinburgh, and just exposing yourselves to lots of creative things and shows. And
yeah, that's so cool.
That's a bit disappointing, but yeah. I'll replace
next year.
yeah, definitely. We'll all have a right jam-packed 2021, won't we? I've got like so many weddings that have been cancelled this year that are booked in for next year, and other holidays, and 60th celebration that was due to happen in July. That's now next year.
Yeah.
So,
We've got some making up to do, haven't we?
I know. My parents unfortunately had to cancel their 50th wedding anniversary celebrations. So.
Oh, how lovely.
It's so sad, isn't it, the things that people have had to cancel, but just make 2020 an even better year, won't it?
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Nigel. It was so lovely for me to get the opportunity to meet you, and I'm sure Sandra's really enjoyed catching up with you again after such a long time. So yeah, it's been fantastic having you on the pod. If anyone does want to get in touch, are they best emailing you, LinkedIn, Twitter?
Oh yeah, just drop me a message on LinkedIn. That's fine. Connect up. Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. Perfect. Amazing. And we're looking forward to keep an eye on all the great things you're up to at Scott Logic, and watching your journey as the business grows. So yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.